Some things can be conceived of in idea decades before they end up being implemented in practice. I believe that's the case with the popular amateur radio digital mode FT8. Today I'll read an article that appeared in Amateur Radio magazine, September 1936. It was by R. Glassop, then VK2RF. The parallels with FT8 are uncanny, even down to the 15-second transmission time. Electronic QSLing is also predicted in this article. Sit back, relax, and have a listen how amateur radio in 2036, which is less than 15 years away, was conceived of in 1936. The article by R. Glassop, VK2RF. Jim leant back in his shack chair, removed his cans, and massaged his ears gently to restore circulation. He felt very pleased with himself, by which you might guess the rig had been getting on to his satisfaction. A glance at his log would have confirmed your judgment. 6 QSOs, including 4 continents, not to mention a new country, all worked within 2 hours, was the tale it told. What ham with a licence dating back only 3 months would not have felt equally pleased? A clock struck in the next room with a single reverberating stroke. Jim gave a start at this intimation that the time was 1 a.m. and only then began to realise how sleepy he felt. A fire was still smouldering in the comfortably warm shack, and Jim settled a bit lower in his chair, half closed his eyes, and let his thoughts roam unhindered. And, as anyone can guess, he was thinking about how good he was at working DX. Not such a bad effort, he thought, with all reports T8 or 9 and at least R6. These electron-coupled oscillators can push out a good note if you go about it the right way. Wonderful the advances made in the game in the last few years. I suppose if a fellow had worked that string I got tonight about 15 years ago, they'd have thought him a marvel. But when you look at it that way, I suppose that I'd open my eyes if I could see a ham station in the future. Say 100 years from now. 100 years. 100 years. 100 years, a voice was saying as Jim opened his eyes. That's how long you've been asleep. You've been here in the ham section of the museum all this time. I'm the caretaker and just noticed you stirring as I was locking up for the night. I can hardly believe it, said Jim. Is it really 2036? Yes, 2036, said the caretaker. What a change you'll notice. They'll be asking you to give your impressions at one of the television stations in no time. So television is here at last, exclaimed Jim. Yes, said the caretaker, chuckled. We don't have newspapers now. We see events as they happen all over the world. But I suppose the first thing you'd want to see is a ham shack. You bet, cried Jim enthusiastically. You must have elaborate shacks now. Where's the nearest ham? Oh, I'm a ham, remarked the caretaker, though Jim noticed that the way he said it did not appear to suggest much pride in his ham status. I'm VK2XFG8K2. What a long call, said Jim. What's the idea? Well, there are 2 million licensees in Australia now, so it's necessary. Holy smoke, how did you get through the QRM? There isn't any QRM now. Our automatic receivers can copy through any interference. Well, that's a help. Now where's your shack? I'm anxious to see it. It's on the 251st floor of this building. We used to be a lot higher, but the missus used to get nervous at the height. Cripes, what a skyscraper! By the way, I notice the human race hasn't changed much. All I can see different about you is that your mouth is larger, ears are flatter, and the fingers of your right hand are stumpier. Yes, that's the effects of a few generations of hams, replied VK2, etc. We'll call him that for short. Big mouth from talking into mics, flat ears from wearing cans, stumpy fingers from pounding brass. However, since there's been no need to do these things, we're getting back to normal. What? Screamed Jim. No talking into mics, no listening, no brass pounding. How can you ever possibly QSO? Oh well, things are much easier now. Here's the shack. Come in and see for yourself. Jim entered, prepared to see almost anything. He would not have been surprised to see 20 large relay racks end on end, tubes 4 feet high, and a receiver with 50 tubes. Instead, he could scarcely repress an exclamation of disappointment at the meagre amount of gear in the room. All there was, and there could be nothing hidden, was a closed box-like affair about 4 feet long, 2 feet high, and about 2 feet deep, and a panel a yard square, covered with push buttons, each labelled. Everything is in the one unit now, said VK2, etc. It's all automatic and controlled from this panel. I see, said Jim. How different from my old rig. How about some technical details, tube lineup and all that kind of thing? As a matter of fact, I don't know what's inside the box. It's sealed down and can only be opened by an amateur station serviceman, by the employee of the world government. What? How, Jim? You didn't build it? You don't even know what's inside it? No, of course I don't. You see, any form of experimenting is forbidden now. Years ago it was realised there wasn't much left to discover, so all experimenting is now left to the radio department of the world government. When anyone wants a ham licence, he applies, pays the fee of 2 shillings, and the government sends him a rig with a pamphlet on how to work it. Visions of hard swatting of theory, countless hours spent copying code, the AOPC 30 shilling licence fee, the building up of his gear flew through Jim's mind. How easy it was to be a ham now. Too easy, in fact. Couldn't be so much fun in it now, he ruminated. When I was on the air, said Jim, we used to get a lot of fun out of building things, having them go wrong and fixing them. Yes, it must have been fun, replied VK2, etc., rather enviously. But what we've never had, we'll never miss. Like to see me have a QSO? Go ahead, and you might explain things to me as you go along, like a good fellow. Oh, there's nothing much in it. Here's how it works. As we came through the door, we broke an electron beam, and that switched things on. Now, who would you like to work? Cripes, is it easy as that, working anyone you want? Well, let's see if you can raise an EA. Yes, we can raise any country at any time of the day these times. Well, to raise an EA, all I do is to press this button labelled CQ and this one EA. You'll notice there's a button for every country in alphabetical order. The pressing of these buttons causes an automatic CQ EA call to go out in a narrow beam straight at Spain. The box contains the antenna, by the way. The outside affairs used to get mixed up with auto. Pressing the EA button automatically points the transmitting and receiving antennas at EA. He pressed the buttons. The call is going out now with 1,000 kilowatts behind it. It lasts about 15 seconds, and the transmitter automatically switches over to the receiver as it signs K at the end of the call. See that light that just switched on at the bottom of the panel? That means an EA station has answered. The receiver swings around the band until it finds a station calling us. Now you'll notice the light has gone out. That means he's over and we're getting back to him. By pulling the switch, we give him an over. Very snappy, Jim remarked, flabbergasted at the ease with which everything worked. What do you, the transmitter, say to him? Oh, just good night, old man, and thanks for the call. Very pleased to QSO. Your signal's here, 5 and 9. By the way, all reports are 5 and 9 now. Please QRK, please QSL, QRU 73, see you again, good night. Well, said Jim grimly, I noticed that rubber stamp QSOs haven't changed. Of course, explained VK2 etc. By pressing this button marked Ragchew, we'll give him a report on the weather and conditions. A barometer inside the box does that. But since we're able to control the weather and make it the same everywhere, it's hardly worthwhile. Besides, if I prolong the QSO for more than 2 minutes, the other fellow might be annoyed. I see, just like that, eh? Jim was beginning to feel annoyed at the easy way modern ham radio worked. Yes, there's nothing to get worried about now. By pulling this tray out of the box, we find a slip which had printed on it all the other fellow said. Of course, it's the same that we said to him, so in that rare case of any QRM, we'll know what he said. In fact, I hardly even bothered to read it. By the way, as the transmitter signed SK at the end of the QSO, it automatically printed a QSL card, stamped it, and shot it down a chute to the mailbox. The EA will get it by high-speed plane tomorrow morning. Now what do you think of the way we do things, old man? Don't you wish you had a shack like this? Not a bit of it, yelled Jim. I wouldn't swap you for £1,000. Millions of hams, practically free licenses, no technical knowledge, no building up, no operating, any DX anytime. Why, you're not a ham at all. What? Yelled VK2 etc. How dare you insult me? I'll teach you. Take that. And that. And that. He struck Jim on his head with his fist in a frenzy of rage. Jim opened his eyes. He was in his own shack and his brother was standing beside him, playfully tapping him on the head with a dud 45 tube. Cripe, said Jim, I've never appreciated this station as much as I do now. 3 cheers for 1936. And that was an article by R. Glassop, VK2RF, written in 1936, appearing in the September 1936 issue of Amateur Radio magazine. The article was called Ham Radio in 2036, A Prophecy. And, as you can hear, some bits of it are surprisingly similar to the FT8 we use today.